Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second Community AMA. I'm here once again with the lovely CEO of our project, Chris McCabe, our CTO, Key Jeffries, our Chief Software Architect, Jason Rhinelander, and of course, last but once again not least, our CMO, Josh Jessup-Smith. Now, if you saw the first one, we're pretty much here to do the same thing again, so you know exactly how this is going to run. We've been taking questions from the community for the last week or so. We're going to get through as many as we can, try and answer the hard questions as much as possible. And so let's not waste any time. Let's just get right into it, gents. The first question is for you, Chris. With the foundation now making around 400,000 USD per month from chain flip validators, what is the need for such a long runway? Why not give the offset back to the community?
Yeah, cool. So if you take a snapshot, yes, there's 400K that's probably going to come into the foundation in this month for running validators. But what about the month after that and the month after that? We can't be entirely reliant on a secondary project for this project's sustainability and growth. So we need to sort of look internally, plan internally, prepare for the worst, but then plan for the best. So that's why we can't be entirely reliant on chain flip. It is awesome that the foundation is getting those rewards, but we can't depend on them.
Josh, are there any plans to do a community airdrop of Flip once it's unlocked next year?
No, it doesn't make sense for us to do this with Flip. The Flip is going to be used for the funding of the project, but we do have a community ecosystem fund. So doing something like this with Cent, that isn't out of the question, because of course we want to incentivize the node network. We want to bring new entrants into the community. And that's exactly what the community ecosystem fund is going to be for. It's going to be for building up the whole ecosystem, the whole community. But the Flip, it doesn't make sense to airdrop another project like that. That would just go back into the funding for what we're doing here.
Key, can you provide some details on how ONS name registrations for Session will be handled moving forward, both in terms of migrating the existing ONS registrations as well as how will the system work after the transition?
Yeah, so there's some intricacies here because ONS has been running over 3 years, or 3 or 4 years, something like that now, a while. And the way that we've registered names throughout those years has been a little bit different. Like we've used different hashing algorithms throughout the scheme's history. So I don't think it may not be a one-size-fits-all kind of migration strategy. The names that were registered earlier maybe need to be migrated in a different way from the names that have been registered like now. But generally, the idea is that we will take all of the registered names or a representation of the registered names, whether that be through taking all of the hashes to the Ethereum network and deploying them there, or a Merkle root of all of the hashes. And then you'll be able to kind of prove your ownership of a particular name on the Ethereum chain to claim it back. And while that name is registered on the Ethereum chain or the EVM chain, you won't be able to register a name with the same name in its place. So essentially your name will be reserved until you come and claim it at a later point. But as I said, there may be some intricacies here with like an active migration period where you need to actively migrate your name for some of the older names especially. So yeah, it's not set in stone, but we will announce more details about how it works as we come up to the migration.
I was going to just chuck in there. I love my ONSs, and no way, shape, or form do we want people to lose their really cool ONSs. So we'll make sure we're like supporting that as we move through, because it's a really cool feature in Session for sure.
I believe that Chris personally owns the first name of every person in the Oxen project. And he was one of the mad people who rushed in at the very beginning to steal all our names.
Yeah.
So that he could,
let me clarify here.
Sell them back to us as a ransom.
I didn't want you guys missing out. So I got in there. You guys were, I don't want to say you guys were lazy or slow or anything. No, just I would say that. I got in there quick and I made sure that everyone on the team had a beautiful name sitting there ready to go. So team player, I would say. Team player.
As I recall, I was up for about 24 hours all that night to try and make Pulse work, because that was the same one where Pulse broke the network for many hours. So let's talk about who was lazy and who wasn't.
I salute you, sir. Incredible appreciation.
Okay, sounds like there's some things to sort out later there. Josh, would the foundation consider just participating in the rewards program like everybody else, rather than creating a larger allocation for yourselves? That way the OPTF and the community will face the same dilution.
So it could do that, but it wouldn't really make any sense, because right now the problem is the foundation needs more tokens in its treasury, because we've had problems not having enough in the past. And that's a huge part of what we're trying to solve here. We need the foundation to have more tokens, so that when these partnerships come up, we actually have tokens to give to these partners. We actually have options, because right now we're very limited. So for us to go into the swapping process the same way as everyone else kind of leaves us in the exact same position coming out the other end. So it doesn't really make sense.
Let me just add one thing onto what Josh said there. When we talk about partnerships, and I think we were doing this a bit in the last AMA, we talked about partnerships a few times. I think it's important to note that partnerships that we would pursue are not for the benefit of ourselves, but for the benefit of the network that we're building. I mean, the OPTF is required to further our cause, and our cause is not to better ourselves, it's to build the things that we're building.
Yeah, 100%. So that's why with us increasing the treasury, it's not like we're trying to do that because we're just trying to grab money for ourselves. The foundation doesn't allow that to happen. We're literally doing it because we want to do what's best for the project. And this is one of those things that have been holding us back historically that we can fix right now.
Chris, are there any plans to buy back session tokens for a direct price increase?
Yeah, cool. So we can't do any activities that directly increase the price of Send. We can't, and if we do, it has to be very transparent. You have to go through a bunch of steps. It needs to be fair. And we can't promise or sort of discuss any future activities that involve the price of the session token going up in the future. All we can do is discuss the technology that we're building, the sort of ecosystem that we're putting together, and how we're going to do it. And the price is completely defined by the market. We do not control or want to have any control over that.
This question is for you, Jason. Moving to an ERC20 token does not maintain the privacy integrity of Session or Lokinet, because the metadata created by transparent purchases of Pro features could be used to expose the connections between users. What is your solution to this issue?
This is a bit of a thorny issue, but so first of all, the actual data that you sent on Session, there's no compromise there. Session is totally private. You can't tell who you're talking to. Or rather, someone on, of course you can tell who you're talking to, but someone on the outside cannot tell who you're talking to. But as this question, of course, pertains more though to Session Pro. Session Pro is a bit more of a thorny issue, because if you're making payments, that's a whole other avenue in terms of where someone might track you and might say, oh, hey, you have this ONS, or you have this Session Pro account, and I know your session ID, and I could figure out which record is yours, and I could follow the trail back. To the extent that we have a protection against that, it's going to have to be a protection essentially at the point that you make this sale. So it's either going to have to involve that you obtain tokens to make a payment through some privacy preserving mechanism, or someone who helps you make that exchange. It's not an easy problem to solve. And even if we were still in Oxen, it still wouldn't be an easy problem to solve. I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but it's, we don't want people to have to give up their privacy at all for Session. And we will never require you to go through KYC. We'll never require you to make any purchase to participate in Session or Lokinet. But there may be optional components where it is more difficult to make payments and opt into that part of the network and stay perfectly private. And if you are absolutely paranoid about privacy and you really don't want to give anything up, then Session Pro may not be the thing that you actually want to go through. And that's a decision an individual will have to make. We will certainly do what we can to try and make that as private as possible, but we may not ever be able to get it absolutely totally airtight private.
But the other thing to note too is we're not planning to add extra privacy behind paywalls as well. So, you know, like when it comes to Session Pro, it's not like paying for it will make it more private. You're still going to have just the same amount of privacy on the free version that you would on Session Pro anyways.
Key, seeing as you are abandoning the privacy coin aspect of the project, at least in part due to regulatory reasons, why should we believe that you won't do the same for Session or Lokinet if there is sufficient regulatory pressure?
So I think that this is mainly about focus. There's potential that we can fight 3 different battles at the same time. So on the privacy coin side, on the Session side, and on the Lokinet side, if that fight ever comes to be. But fighting like a battle on 3 fronts simultaneously is a very hard war to win. It's way better if we reduce down and focus just on Session and Lokinet. Those products are much easier to defend. They have a lot of kind of precedent around them. There's a lot of networks out there. People understand the messaging space. They don't really understand the privacy coin space, and the privacy coins aren't gaining as much traction as well. So if we look at this from a kind of global perspective, it makes way more sense for us to focus on Session. It's our most successful product, and Lokinet as well. So that's essentially what we're doing. But that's not to say that, if someone comes along and knocks on Session's door, that we're just going to roll over and put it back there on the application. That's totally not what we want to do, and not something that we would do either. We're willing to fight on that front for Session and Lokinet as well.
And Key, what are the principal security assumptions and vulnerabilities in the Session token network's token distribution model? Oxen was relatively decentralized among its holders, and it was assumed that if someone tried to attack the network or acquire a large amount of Oxen quickly, the price would rise and make the attack really expensive. However, with the new Session token allocation, a significant amount of the tokens are held by centralized parties. Have you considered this?
Yes. It's not going to be, the largest portion of supply on day one is going to be people from the swapping programs. So from the service node bonus and swapping programs, that's 60 million Oxen. And I think we'll have more details about this, but I think we're looking at about having about 80 million Oxen be out there on day one. So, you're talking about the majority of people from day one being existing Oxen holders. So if you consider that group of people is already decentralized, then it's decentralized. The token distribution is decentralized as we come into the new coin as well. It won't be for many years that venture capitalists and other people start getting distributed tokens. So we should be keeping a fairly equitable distribution over the next couple of years, in my view. And yeah, people, the distribution of Oxen was extremely centralized at the start as well. But people sell over time, tokens change hands, people buy, it's all different things happen, and you end up with a more equitable distribution in the end.
Just to add on to what Key said before, there's still a sunk cost in terms of operating the nodes and being part of the network. So those who possibly seek to damage the network would still have quite a substantial exposure to the network. So they're not really incentivized to do that, and that sort of economic model still stands strong.
Key, are there any plans to introduce governance features with Session token?
Yeah, so as we migrate to an Ethereum or an EVM kind of based environment, there is a lot more of an ability to put in governance features. I know this is something that a lot of other projects do. For example, they'll have token weighted voting, or ways to represent people in DAOs and stuff like that. There are some legal complications there with how the OPTF would do that, and how binding decisions are and all of that stuff. So we would need to look into the legal side of things pretty carefully. But it is interesting, and I think it's something that we'll definitely put some thought into. But yeah, it obviously pens some serious kind of legal investigation about how that would work.
Great. And another question for you, Key. Can the railgun private address or wallet be used to register for the Session token points program?
No, I don't think so, because I'm pretty sure the railgun addresses are in a special format that aren't Ethereum, normal Ethereum addresses, if that makes sense. And our plan with doing kind of on-chain privacy features has always been that we would investigate more seriously after the token migration. Like, we already have so much on our plate with the token migration. There's a lot of code that needs to be written, a lot of contracts that needs to be written. So it's more like, let's get migrated over first and then look at what privacy solutions can be offered on chain, and the parties that we can work with on the Ethereum chain already who provide those. So yeah, I would say, like, it's not our focus in the migration to use kind of, you know, any of these on-chain privacy features just yet.
Awesome. And Josh, how many session tokens are actually allocated for team members?
So it's not a good idea to expose the individual team members' salaries and compensations. It's not a good idea to do that internally. It's an even worse idea to do that publicly. It's just like not respectful to the team. But in a more general sense, like in generalities, you can figure this stuff out, right? Like, our burn rate is 1.6 million a year. We have 24 employees, so you can like average that out to get a ballpark of, you know, like salaries across the company. And then that doesn't even include operational costs like office space and server costs and that sort of thing. So similarly, you'll be able to do that with the team allocation. So we're working on a document at the moment that will come out really soon that has a breakdown of all the distributions and lockups of what's happening with the tokens. And you can do the same kind of calculations, right? You can like look at the amount we have to kind of figure out a ballpark. But the one thing to definitely keep in mind in that front is that we will be keeping like a decent portion for new employees, to incentivize new employees who come in. So it's not like it's all going to go to existing team members. But yes, when it comes to individually saying each person's figures, that's not something that we're going to do.
Chris, if it's not a regulatory issue, what's the reason for abandoning the Oxen coin and replacing it with an EVM token? Why not just combine the worlds of privacy and EVM and have two tokens under one umbrella?
Easy. So it's not a regulatory problem right now, but we foresee it becoming a regulatory problem and a high friction problem for the project. Maintaining two chains is very difficult, and it's sort of, it doesn't really bring much value overall. It's quite difficult to do, and it will not really help the project. The other sort of key concept there is that we won't be building in the privacy features on the token side. And to a degree, for those who like privacy features and functionality, there are so many third parties who are offering features that are EVM compatible. So plugging into that network allows us to engage with so many other tools out there, but we don't have to spend time building out those tools. So it's much more efficient for us as a project to move across. And then if people want to, there's so many organizations that are focused on privacy features and functionality that we can sort of allow them to engage and sort of work with the token.
T, is there a plan in place to have an end-to-end encrypted way of sending session token or an alternative token for payment of goods and services through the session app, essentially making it a wallet and a private messaging platform all in one place?
Yes.
Great.
No, just to be more serious on that, there is a plan for it. It probably is going to take a backseat to some of the more fundamental things that we're doing in the application, like integrating Lokinet, making closed groups way better, fixing disappearing messages, which are like our focuses over the next, and onboarding, which are our focuses over the next couple of months. But yeah, a wallet would be very interesting. And I think with the layer 2 that we are looking at right now, with gas fees being so low and stuff, it would be really easy to send balances between individual session wallets or session clients. So yeah, it's something we're definitely thinking about, but it's probably going to come a little bit later.
Josh, who exactly is on the team, and what are some of the successes that they have had prior to joining Oxen?
So there's around 24 members scattered over various parts of the world on the team. I'm not gonna be able to bio each and every one. I don't work directly with each and every person on the team. But for the successes, if the main concern is that you're worried that the team doesn't have what it takes to deliver, then I would just say look at the products that we've built over the last 6 years. You know, Session is one of the most used Web3 applications out there. Like, and Lokinet, like there's innovations in private messaging, in private routing. These aren't easy, simple web applications that we're building. These are actually really tough applications that we're building, and they've come really far. They've got a user base. Yes, Session has some bugs in it, but despite the bugs and despite where it's at, it's still growing. So it shows that there is an audience for that right now. So I would say we do have what it takes. The coin part is the part that is lagging behind at the moment. And that's exactly what we're trying to do now. We're trying to bring it up to be able to thrive just like the other products are, you know? So yeah, that's how I would answer that question, I suppose.
Will the OPTF still be able to use their Oxen since they're not participating in the token swap? Or what exactly is going to happen with all of this Oxen?
Yeah, so the current plan is just to have those tokens essentially sit there. We don't want to participate in the Oxen swap or the service node bonus program because both of those would limit the amount that the community gets when they participate in those programs. So we're going to exclude ourselves completely from those. But yeah, the tokens will essentially just sit there doing nothing. The wallets are auditable, so everyone can check that we're not secretly participating in any of the programs that we designed for the swap. And the addresses are up on the Foundation's websites if you want to check that out.
Okay, this question is for you, Jason. Can you provide more details on the lockup of the OPTF's flip holdings? Is it all locked or is there any unlocked at the moment?
Okay, so I ran the numbers for this question because this gets a little bit complicated, so bear with me. So off the top, the OPTF received an allocation of 4.2 million flip. However, some of that was either sold or exchanged with with third parties, and this was, I believe, more than a year ago that those agreements took place. And so we currently have, yeah, right. So of that 4.2, we have either sale or exchange agreements for a 1.1 million of that. But one of those agreements has already gone ahead for 400,000. That person has that flip. The remaining 700,000 is owed at the end of the 1-year lockup period. So we have possession of that, and we are actually able to stake that during the period and keep the proceeds of staking, and then we turn over the 700,000 at the end. So in terms of actual flip that we own, it is about 3.1 million. But in terms of what we possess, it's 3.8 million. Okay, so of the 3.8 million, 600,000 was under chain flip lockup term B, which means 20% of that unlocked immediately at token generation. The remaining unlocks over a 1-year period. And those locked funds are not stakeable. We have under chain flip lockup A 3.2 million, and that is fully stakeable. We currently have about 3.05 or so of that staked into the 20 chain flip validators that we currently run. We sold about 100,000 of the amount that unlocked at token generation. So putting all of that together, we have possession of about 3.7 million, but ownership of about 3.0 million. Whew, okay, sorry. There's a lot of numbers, and I think anybody watching that is probably going to have to pause and go back and jump around a few times to get a grasp of it all. But I think I got all the pertinent details in there.
I hope you can make sense of this question, Jason. If the team does not maintain the Oxen coin after sent TGE, how will Oxen holders be able to swap to Session token?
I would love to stop maintaining the Oxen wallet software. I don't think I've made any secret of how much I hate having to deal with code over the years. But we will maintain that because we have to. So long as the swap is going to be possible from Oxen into Session token, we will maintain that so that, somebody asked me today, I think in Telegram, a question about when this would, what the termination on that would be, and maybe it was Session that they asked me that on actually. But essentially, we don't want people to lose their coins. We want to bring everybody across from Oxen into Session. The only real reason that we would even consider putting a termination date on it is if the maintenance burden of keeping the chain going, of keeping the Oxen software going, becomes a larger and larger burden. We kind of want to cut that burden off at some point. We don't have a concrete date for that in mind, though. And so, at least for the foreseeable future, we will continue to maintain the Oxen chain and the Oxen wallet. Although our only focus after the token generation is just going to be to allow you to swap into Session tokens.
Yeah, I'll add a point to that as well. The Oxen chain will have to be maintained in it's like to some ability because it's going to be used as what we're going to call the work chain. So there'll be some consensus activities that are going on there for the service node network. So for that reason, the Oxen chain kind of needs to be maintained as well, but it doesn't need to be maintained in its current state, which means, blocks being created every 2 minutes and having all of these fancy features that are technically complex to allow, transactions to happen instantly and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's a story of like, we want to support swaps out for a very long time so that people can swap over, but we're not sure in what capacity the Oxen chain will still be supported in.
All right, once again, an open question. Why won't the team accept responsibility for the failure that is the Oxen privacy coin? It's clear the development of the coin hasn't been a priority for a long time. Stop trying to blame regulations and exchanges for the coin's downfall.
I think I'll go ahead and say that like not everything we did on Oxen was perfect. Like I'll admit that freely. Like we made mistakes on Oxen. We didn't see like what was going to happen in the next kind of 5 years after we developed Oxen. It's very hard to tell the future. I think that we thought privacy coins were going to be bigger than they were. The market narrative just didn't really develop around them as much, I would say. But I think we built some really cool stuff on Oxen as well. Like we built like one of the first proof of stake Monero coins. We built the first Monero coin that could do instant transactions, which a lot of other people wanted to do. It just seemed like the market demand wasn't really there. And the regulation part of it was also a thing as well. And that I think is only going to get worse over the next couple of years. So it's not that we lied and just kind of said that regulation was the only reason. It was one of the big reasons that Oxen couldn't really continue in its current state. So yeah.
Another piece of that is, I think as someone mentioned earlier, one of our focuses is to say, well, what are the battles that we can pick and choose? And when we look at the Oxen coin, it's the most difficult to try and push it out there for all sorts of regulatory reasons. But that's not the only thing going here. We also have two really interesting and innovative technologies in Session and Lokinet. They still have a bright future ahead of them. They're still quite unique products in their spaces. Whereas, we did have some interesting things happening on the Oxen privacy chain, but they never really took off. And there's a lot of competition out there in terms of privacy coins, and there are people who are doing it better than we are. So we have to sit down and say, hey, what is it that we're doing that is really unique and really cool and brings something new to the table? And the answer to that is not the coin. It's Session and Lokinet. And who knows, maybe some cool mystery products in the future.
And I will add too that, I mean, as we've kind of mentioned a bunch before, like everything we're doing right now is trying to fix a lot of the fundamental issues that were holding us back previously. Where this whole thing is us trying to solve a lot of the issues that we faced and the issues that we've seen. And even Chainflip has had the luxury of executing on the lessons learned from, from this. And that's something that it's worked out well for them. And that's something we want to replicate, and we can replicate as well.
Excellent. All right. Another question that I will leave open, but I'm particularly interested to hear your input on this, Jason. Why does the team get a session token allocation? This is undeserved. Getting a weekly salary should be enough incentive to do the job, but instead you delete token holders to fill the pockets of the team and has not demonstrated any ability to produce products without bugs or to effectively market those products.
Well, all right, that's a pretty loaded question. Thanks for singling me out on that. The kind of cool truth of the matter is a weekly salary, it'll get you a certain distance. But at the end of the day, if you're paying someone a salary, you have to pay them a competitive salary or they're going to leave. So we can pay people a higher salary to get them to stay and say, that's all you get. You get your salary and nothing else. Or we can actually say, hey, we want to bring you in, and over the long term, we want you to be a part of this product. If this project really excels, we want you to share in that. But that brings some of the risk of the success of the project into the individual, because essentially we're saying you're going to get a little bit less salary now. Because guess what? 3 years down the road, or more than 3 years, 3 years after the token generation, once these coins unlock for an individual, that's a part of your salary. So when we're looking at the individuals and we're looking at individual salaries, it's not just, hey, here's the salary that you're getting. It's you're getting a weekly, monthly salary, plus you're getting this other allocation, and you need to consider all of that together. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're getting. And so we, as an organization, we can afford to hire a few more devs for the same price now by giving some token award in the future. And so the hope is that all balances out. But even more importantly than that, it really ties someone's incentive to the well-being and the success of the project. Because when you know that what I'm going to end up with 3 years from now is very much dependent on how well the project does, that gives you a real drive. And we really want people to feel really connected into what we're doing, and not just to show up and say, hey, my contract says I've got to work this many hours. I'll sit down, I'll do that work, and I'll go home and forget about it. We want people that are much more involved, and that's what we can do with token allocations. So why do we do the token allocations? Well, I think there's a lot of decent justifications for it. I just want to add one thing to that. So the team allocations that we've set up, actually, I want to add two things. So one, the team allocation that we set up, it has strings attached, that there are certain expectations that we have on individuals, and if they fail to live up to them, they can lose those allocations. So this isn't a blind, oh, here's some funds, now you can just disappear. At the foundation director level, we spent quite a number of intense hours, primarily Alex and Chris and I, kind of figuring out what the size of those allocations should be. And what we ended up with is an allocation that isn't too big and isn't too small. It's kind of a Goldilocks allocation, in that we wanted it to be enough that if Session does extremely well, that it's a sizable benefit to people. But if it does poorly, it's not, because we don't want people on the team to be able to say, well, I can just do a crappy job, and even if session tanks, I have so many tokens, it's still going to be worth a lot. So we really tried to hit that kind of Goldilocks level in terms of providing the right incentive so that we only benefit substantially if the project does well.
Please tell us exactly how the Foundation's treasury allocation of 60 million session tokens is going to be distributed. What are you going to use it for?
Got a bunch of content coming out that sort of breaks all this down, but from a really high level, we're only looking to have 80 million liquid supply TGE. So I'm just taking a step back before we dive into the deep end here. 60 million of that is going to be from the swaps and the node bonus. 6 million will be liquid from the project, and 14 is aimed to be liquid for sort of ecosystem fund for the first year. So if you sort of break down the numbers for the first year, it's not like percentages and ratios, stuff like that. It's actually quite close. In terms of long term, like what are we going to do with the tokens? Things like, so there'll be a breakdown for node operations. So the Foundation will run up to 10% of the nodes. There's a small allocation for team with a 3-year lockup. And then on top of that, there'll be sort of market making or liquidity stuff as well as partnerships in the future. I think I don't know what people assume we do with tokens. We don't get a big like pool and put all these tokens in there and dance around like Scrooge McDuck in there and have a swim. We don't do that. They're all used for the project. So that's the intention. That's what we do. That's what we've done in the past. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. And we'll get the details coming out really shortly as well. So
awesome.
We do the Scrooge McDuck party. That sounds nice.
Oh, you didn't go to the last one? It was so good.
I'd like to say though, if we didn't get through any of the questions, well, I mean, we likely didn't get through all the questions. There were more questions that we didn't get through, and the reason that we're not answering all the questions isn't because we're trying to dodge any questions. We're trying to pick the hardest ones and the most relevant ones and add them. The reason is because no one is going to sit through like a 3 or 4 hour video of us just talking. So that's why we're breaking them up into these kinds of portions to eventually get through them all, but to make sure that people actually sit down and watch the videos.
Okay. Yeah. So as Josh said, we didn't have a chance to get through every single question. We are still here. We're still answering as many as we can. We're addressing all of the hard questions. We're here to talk to you. And we will probably be doing more of these videos in the future as well. We are not going anywhere. We're in here for the long haul. So we will be back again in the future. We will continue to talk to the community about this plan throughout the transition. Thank you to all of the people who made the time to be here and answer these questions today, as well as to all of the community members who sent their questions in. It is much appreciated, and we appreciate the discourse. So without further ado, I'm going to end off this particular AMA. Look forward to seeing all of you next time. Thanks, everybody.